Hi, I want to talk about getting information out of the system. I deliberately use the term getting information versus reporting because unlike older systems where everything had to be put onto paper or previewed or PDF'd and people had to run reports, modern systems should oftentimes preclude the need to actually run reports in the system. So let's address the topic of how we typically try to figure things out in Business Central. My personal preference is to never ever run a report. There's probably a handful of reports I've run in a couple of decades now, including running in public companies using this software. And what I love about the Business Central solution is everything's transactional, everything's data oriented. So if you understand the business process of what you're doing, you can always find the answers. One of the key areas that I start with is if we're looking at the chart of accounts and we see balances and numbers showing up on here. This is my entire natural GL account structure. I'm going to close out the filter window for a second here just so we can see more data. If I personalize here, I can add more columns of data onto the system. So typically some organizations will uh, have the budget information that we want to see in our view. And then we have other data components that not all organizations will use, like the ability to add commitments and encumbrances into the system. So you can actually track your available money, reflecting not just your budget, but also your existing requisitions or purchase orders in the system. However, that's a later story. But just to start here, now we're showing budget and actual. Let's go ahead and search down into deeper into the system, into my expense area. So here's my travel expense account. I just used the search box up here. It found all occurrences of the word travel in my chart of accounts. And I'm seeing $459,000 of budget and $274,000 of actual. If I drill down on this actual amount, I'll see all my general ledger transactions for that GL account showing here, and we could then proceed here to use the filter pane to further filter this data. So for example, if I wanted to see data for just fund number one, I could say filter to that value, or if I wanted to see information for some other fund in the system, I just can pull that filter over, and now you notice the data has been narrowed down to show just that account. Furthermore, let's say I wanted to just investigate all my invoices in the system. I can filter here to that value. And now I'm seeing all my invoice transactions, my posted purchase invoice document. And if we then go in and do the navigate button, uh, the system will search throughout all our ledgers in the system for that document number. We can see it was posted on January 11th of 2016. Link down here, we can see that original purchase invoice that we entered and posted in the system, as well as the impact of that document across GL, which is actually where we started from. So that's a little redundant in this scenario, but I can also then go look at my accounts payable data. So here's my AP information. If I had any attachments with that purchase invoice, I'd be able to see them here and view them. Let's close off this side panel here. And if I look at this document, I can then furthermore go here and look at applied entries. And I can see that this is the check number. In this case, it was an electronic ACH payment because the REM tells me that's a remittance that we produced to pay off that transaction. So you'll notice that basically I was able to start from my chart of accounts, drill down, and look further. Let's say I wanted to narrow down my dates. I can now go ahead and enter further filters. So I want to filter the totals I'm seeing on here based on a date range, would be pretty typical. And I actually want to see the transaction, the amounts or balances or activity that happened between 010116 through 013116, and you can put in any date range you want. And as I tab off there, you notice the numbers change. So I can see that I did $182,000 in that date period. And now I drill down and we see only the transactions that happen in that span. And I can continue to filter further. So looking down here, just scanning through this data, I notice I had multiple funds in here. I could have also filtered up here using my fund filter. And filtered for fund number 2. And notice the data immediately narrows down and gives me just that rifled in view, if you will, of the transactions in that range for that fund. I can also, in any detailed table like my posted general ledger entries, open this up and add those parameters directly in here, but I chose to start from the chart of accounts and show the drill down. This will also start making more sense later on when we look at how reporting also takes you to these endpoints for drill down, drill across navigation to see everything that happened in the system. So far, the general ledger is obviously one of the main areas, but we can do this in all our ledgers in the system. I can interrogate all the checks I've written, the bank transactions in the same way, my AR aging information, my vendor AP aging information. So for example, if I wanted to do some cash analysis, I go to bank ledger entries. Here's everything that's ever happened through the beginning of time. And again, all these options are available to filter down using the columns, ascend, descent, filter in, as well as the ability to open up the filter panes and have the same options that you saw me using earlier to filter by different fields that exist in that view. Okay, so if I wanted to filter by a specific bank account number, I can do this, drill down, and let's look at somewhere I know have probably very little activity, USA Savings, and I'm seeing all my bank transactions are USA Savings. As before, this is across many dates. I could now add a posting date filter and narrow down my views. The other thing I should point out that our customers love doing after they've used this ability to filter down data across the system, typically hit the Open in Excel button, and when we push data into Excel, you have it sitting there in table form, so you can actually start doing interrogations of data that you've narrowed down and filtered in the system. And of course, from here, you can do all kinds of other fancy stuff for all you Excel lovers in the system. Okay, let's just jump back here into our UI. So I wanted to point out that getting reporting information of the system doesn't always require that we run a report. However, we do like to run reports. So typically there's a handful of reports that I've always used. Uh, Typically in our business, the accounts receivable aging report is pretty critical, but let's focus on the accounts payable area because billings are maybe not that important in a nonprofit organization. So we have many reports in the system, the ability to run your accounts, age accounts payable by fund, all your different 1099 information. And these are just the main reports in the system. There's always more options that you can get to in terms of additional reportings in the system. You can see just there's a ton of reports. It is the #1 ERP product in the world, so pretty much every report ever conceived by humankind probably exists in the system somewhere. Whether you would actually use all of these is a matter for some debate. I would suggest probably you'll use 20 to 30% of all the reports in the system. However, let's look at an accounts payable aging report. And every report in the system will bring up an option tab. We can make further selections on what you want to choose. You'll have different options and switches. And you also have the ability to go ahead and filter your data. So let's say I just want to see aging for a particular vendor. I could narrow it down and just look at that data in the system. All reports, base reports like this in the system, give you the ability to send the report to PDF, Word, Excel, or also hit a scheduler. And with a scheduler, you can schedule a report to be maybe produced overnight if it's a lengthy report and so on. Yeah. Let's just take a look at these options quickly on the scheduling. You'll see we pick the report, the output type, how do we want it to be rendered, do we want it to go printer, do we want to specify date ranges, etc. And then this will get scheduled in the job processor for automatic processing. Let's come back to our accounts payable aging report and actually do something in the system. We can hit preview, see it on screen. Narrow down and look at the data. Obviously, I've narrowed down to just one vendor, just for the sake of brevity here. You would normally probably run everyone. If I go ahead and run this report again, let me check the print detail flag here, do the preview again. In this case, we're seeing the detail line information, invoices and payments, all my aging buckets, etc. on the system. Also have the ability, and all reports are going to have different kinds of options. So I did a 30-day aging. If you wanted to do a 15-day aging, you could enter 15D over here, hit your preview. And if we narrow down in here, you notice the system is doing 15-day buckets automatically. Since everything's transactional in the system, we don't actually pre-store any buckets, so buckets are always dynamically computable at the time you run a report. Let's take that report again, and just to give you another option, I tend to like the ability to push the report data to Excel. So let's go ahead and preview that. And in this case, it's going to run the preview, but you notice down here, it also produced an Excel extract of that aging information, because a lot of us love using Excel. We can do all kinds of other modeling or analysis in here. Also a great way to provide information to your auditors. They just ask you the questions, you sit there, you filter a few things, you dump a bunch of data in Excel, say, here you go. It's all the information you need. Can you please let us get back to our daily work now? Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and come back in here, back into our UI. So all the base operational reports in the system are available. So far I've just talked about things you can do within the system. We've sent you links on how to do Power BI and JET reports, and we covered that in a topic as well. However, we also have out-of-the-box reporting the system, where once you define your chart of accounts, you can run your statement of activities in the system. And I'm going to choose a different option this time, send it to PDF, just to illustrate all the different ways we could do things. So in this case, once I sent it to PDF, we've automatically produced the with or without donor restrictions. And this is your standard layout for a nonprofit statement of activities with your net asset balance information, etc., showing up for you. Okay, so those are the out-of-box. All these out-of-the-box reports are built by something called the account schedule system in the system. This is the internal report writer that is there that the majority of our customers use to do their financial reporting. I'm going to choose the statement of activities example, go ahead and do an online preview of my financial statement. Notice it's showing with my 3 columns. The data is for 1 day. I'm going to change this to a year view. And let's also then pull in my data from the year 2016. And now we notice the balances are showing up in here. Again, the ability to drill down on these and go look at the supporting detail in the system on what laid behind that transaction is prevalent throughout the system, the ability to drill down. But this is something I like. So this is the row layout that you would have built. Then I can change my column layout to say, okay, well, let me see it by fiscal month, for example. And these are some of my favorite reports, is the ability to see data spread across months automatically, because for me, this is a very useful way to do trend analysis. If I push the create new workbook, I can do green bar hyperlinks and actually push this report information out to Microsoft Excel. And if we open up the sheet here, you'll notice that we have that report information rendered in Excel. Here's the numbers, and if we hit the drill down on there, the system will drill back into the system from the Excel generated report back into my accounting system to let me look at the detail. And of course, remember from here, the ability to hit navigate and further investigate. This was part of a couple of bank entries we made that hit 85 general ledger transactions. So those are the built-in reporting capabilities in the system. The key thing is if you look at account schedules, literally when I've done training on this, I find it hard to spend more than half an hour to explain what goes on in this. If we look at the detail of what we define when we do a report, we define the rows. You can define any row you want, reference the GL accounts that you want to pull into each row. If I go look at my statement of activity that I showed you earlier, and I look at the row layouts here in the system, you notice we've got detailed GL accounts on the revenue section. But when I got to my expense section, I actually grouped them by programs to show all my expense accounts in the range 7,000 to 9990 for disability relief. And disability relief in the system is identified in our system based on the program code of 010. So you have the ability to really matrix in and define all the report combinations you'd want. If we look at how a column layout is defined, this was that 3-column we had of unrestricted, temporary, permanent, restricted, and essentially those are the columns we have. And the way we decided what goes in that column is to use a fund class filter, which is a data element in the system. So just as easily you could have decided to filter columns based on department codes or programs, etc. in the system. So lots of ways to get information on the system built into the system. And then in the next video, I'm going to expand on the JET reports capability, which we sent you some links earlier in an email to complete the scenario of all the many ways that you can get information out of the system.